This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I'm so glad you're joining us today. This is your host, Tim Link, back for another great episode. And we've got one of my all-time favorites on here. You'll know him, you'll love him. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's got a series of #1 New York Times best-selling books. He's, of course, the author of the Chet and Bernie mystery series and the Bowser and Birdie series. So we'll talk to him a little bit about that. It's our good friend Spencer Quinn. And Spencer's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about his latest book of Mutts and Men. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ins and outs of the books, the characters, everything to expect without giving all the juicy good bits away. And then, of course, then we'll talk to him about his writing and his skills and how things have changed in all this pandemic and coronavirus. See if there's any shifts in a writer's writing and publicizing the book. So that's going to be interesting to hear. So everybody, just hang on tight. We're going to come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
She's a purebred, orange and white Brittany, but when we adopted April, she started scratching like crazy. I said, what you put into a dog is what you get out. DINOVITE.com. So we had a huge scoop of Dinovite in her bowl. She licked it clean. She loved it. Her coat is now soft, it's silky. Dinovite is nutrition.
You get some Dinovite, how happy your dog will be.
On Dinovite, she's Little Miss Hollywood. DINOVITE.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Joining me now is the best-selling author of the Chet and Bernie mystery series and the #1 New York Times best-selling Bowser and Birdie series for the middle grade readers. You know him, you love him. It's Spencer Quinn. Spencer, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me. Really nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to hear your voice. Great to see the book and all the exciting things going on. And the latest is called Of Mutts and Men. So tell us a little bit about the book and maybe some of the things we can expect there a little bit different or would intrigue us about it.
Well, for people who don't know, the Chet and Bernie mystery series is a traditional kind of private eye series where the sidekick tells the story in the first person. The big difference is that Chet is the sidekick, Bernie is the detective, and Chet is a dog. But he's not a talking dog. This is the key to the whole series. He's a narrating dog, but he can't talk. He's as canine as I could make him. And because of that, he's limited in some ways and he's unlimited in others. And so there's a whole kind of mash that takes place where traditional aspects of this kind of mystery are kind of turned upside down and moved around, and it's certainly made it very interesting for me as the writer.
And that's one of the many things I love about your writing in this particular series, also the Chet and Bernie series, is because, there are a lot of great writers out there and a lot of great books where the dog is talking and narrating. There's a lot of other ones where you have a human lead and then have a sidekick or a secondary character as the dog or the cat or whatever the animal is. And you sort of, mastered the way of blending both, where you put Chet in charge, but yet he is, your traditional dog per se. He's not the talking dog, though he does get a lot accomplished and definitely leads the charge.
Yes, well, he's a narrating. Well, okay, if you know dogs or have had dogs in your life, they've got a narrative going on in their head all the time. They're obviously having thoughts, they're obviously having emotions, they're complex, and that's really what I try to get on the page. Then when you look at it from a sensory viewpoint, we humans, we're so visual. The sense of sight is paramount, and the others are kind of, well, certainly in Chet's eyes, the others are kind of puny. In us, well, in him, probably vision is number 3. You'd have to say smell and hearing are way much, much stronger. So his whole perception of the world and everything that's going on is filtered through these other senses first. And so his take is very different from Bernie's or any of the other humans in the story. And when you put that into a mystery, parts of the mystery are almost, although he can't do the logic part, because of his senses, he can figure out or he just knows things that are going on. For example, he can kind of sense when someone's lying, or just on a very simple thing. If someone has a gun on them that's recently been fired, well, Chet knows. And if they say, no, I have no gun, Chet knows they're lying right away. So it's made it very interesting for me, too, to just try to imagine what the world is like if you change the order of the paramountcy of our different senses. So that's one of the fun things about it. Of Mutts and Men is I never knew this was going to happen, but that we would go this far. Of Mutts and Men is the 10th book in the series.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's now what you'd call a fairly long series. And one of the challenges I think that a lot of writers have faced in a very long series is how do you keep the energy of it? I'm sure most of the listeners have, they've read the first book in a series and loved it, and then they couldn't wait to get their hands on the second, and they liked it a lot, and the third one they kind of liked, and that's kind of it, and it's because the energy ran out. Well, I find, and how do you put the energy in there? How do you force energy? I think in terms of writing good fiction, that's impossible. I think no matter how much technique you have, I think that once you begin to have to force it, to put it on some kind of amphetamines, the reader will spot that every time. And even though it'd be hard to analyze it and say, okay, here's a chapter where obviously he ran out of gas, or here, the feeling of it is there and it'll be on every page. Well, with this, I love writing in this voice of Chet so much, and I love to get back to it when I start a new book, that it really hasn't come up for me. So I haven't had to face that problem, and so other things have been able to happen in the series. One, I think the depth of the relationship between Chet and Bernie has grown a lot, and I think that the relationships between the different recurring characters have also grown a lot. So for me, it's actually been a blessing. But one thing I should add, the title of Mutts and Men is not my title. Over on Chet's Facebook page, we invited reader participation, and there must have been 100 great titles that came in, but this is the one that fit the book the most.
Ah, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. Keeping the audience not only entertained and connected through the book, social media, but also now they've got a stake in it. So,
and they have a stake in it, yes. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So the question is, did you have to cut them in on the royalties? That would be the real question.
No, so what they do, I think whoever came up with it was either a signed hardcover of the last Chet and Bernie, which was Heart of Barkness, or they got a signed advanced reader copy of Mutts and Men. They might have gotten both, actually.
There you go.
And their name was mentioned prominently, etc.
That's great. But
I think people enjoy it. People like to, and it's been a blessing to me too. People like to be part of it. And over on Chet's Facebook page, for example, there's a friend of the month every single month. A random number generator people send in pictures of their dogs all the time, and not just dogs, but cats and gerbils you get, and some kind of little toy animals. Snakes have come in, and birds. And so the random number generator picks the Chet's friend of the month, and that friend is the profile pick for the month, and the friend's human companion gets a signed copy of the latest Chet and Bernie novel. That's one little thing we do there. So actually soon, there'll be a new one.
There you go. Well, everybody definitely take a look at that and follow the page on Facebook for sure. Definitely. It was interesting what you talked about, the energy, going into the energy. How do you keep that pace? How do you keep people engaged? And I found it really interesting, your comment, and the fact that we know that in a series, you got to keep everybody engaged. You got to keep it fresh. And you got to have good energy that comes across on the pages. But you had also said, you get excited. You have the energy. So would you say your energy comes through your writing and then it gets relayed over to the fans?
Yes, I really think that's true. And again, I think that's what can't be faked. It's either there or not. Now, I'm not saying that all good books have to have it even, but I certainly think in something like the mystery form where pace is very important. But at the same time, if you're like me, you don't want to do a mystery that's just all about reversals and pace. You want to have characters that are believable, settings that are interesting, and even thematic material, which most mysteries probably don't have. but that I insist on in mine. So what I mean by that, I don't just mean that the book has a kind of beating heart, a spirit. Now, lots of books don't have that either, but in Chet and Bernie, there is, and it's very obvious what it is. It's the love between Chet and Bernie. So just as an aside, I was at a writer's conference once where someone in the audience said, "What do you do about writer's block?" And the other two writers on the stage, bemoaned it and said, "Oh, it's terrible, and it's, just dogs us, as it were." And I said, the truth is I've never had it, because if I ever get to a point where I'm not sure where to go, I step back and I think of that beating heart, the engine that's driving the story, and some narrative route always suggests itself. And so with this series, it's the love between Chet and Bernie, and I step back and I think, okay, love between Chet and Bernie, whatever's coming next in terms of actual events in the plot has to connect to that beating heart, the love between Chet and Bernie, and some route suggests itself, and off I go. Now, I'm not saying this is easy, because writing is hard work, and you just have to, because you're getting a story on the page, but you then it has to be polished. You don't want to have sloppiness or words that are repeated or tiny little things like that, and you want the dialogue to never just be explanatory, where it's being exposited, where you're just explaining what's going on in these chunks of wooden dialogue. I like to have all that exposition folded in as seamlessly as possible into the story, so that the reader doesn't even know consciously that they're picking up the facts that will allow them to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the misconception for those that, when you take a look at all the writers out there, especially all the fiction writers out there are a chunk, but not a large quantity of excellent writers that have a series. You think, okay, if I put this fiction book together, number one, then maybe I'll get the contract for the next 2 or 3. And then if I'm blessed, it goes on. And so the paychecks keep coming in and things are good. But the challenge I find is the fact that it's not easy to get a series. And secondly, it's not easy to maintain it, like you had mentioned. How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it interesting? How do you not bemoan it thinking, I want the paycheck, but yet, I'm on series number 4 or 5. And then the biggest thing I always find with the series is, people think, well, it's easy. You got 1 or 2 key characters, you add 1 or 2 new ones, you add a new mystery twist, voila, you're good to go. But that's not the case, because there's a lot of research, and those fans will keep you honest. If you forget a character or change something in there that the character didn't do in the past, or you, God forbid, kill off a character that they love, then you're in big trouble as a writer.
Oh, yes. Now, okay, so 2 things. Those are all excellent points. But 2 things, when I began, the first book was Doggone It, and I believe it was a 2-book contract, so you couldn't really call that a series. So I didn't know what was going to happen. Like you put it out into the marketplace, and you're no longer the captain. You're on board, but plenty of things are happening that are not, under your control.
Right. So
people seem to like it, and 2 things. I love writing. I can't ever imagine having a life where I'm not doing it. Because I've written now, I would say probably 40 novels. I've been, my first book came out in 1980, and I can't imagine a life where I'm not, at least most of the year working on, some kind of story. But the second part is I particularly like, it's not just that I like the voice of Chet or the relationship between Chet and Bernie, but I love setting these tales, most of them in the Southwest. I mean, they're in Arizona, but Chet didn't find out it was Arizona till the 6th book, I don't think. He just thinks of it as the valley. But it's kind of where they live. What I wanted a big urban area that's close to absolute wilderness, so that Chet could experience both. So it's kind of based on Phoenix, but the vibe is much more like Tucson, I would say. So it's a made-up city called the Valley, but people who know Arizona, and, some takes place sometimes in New Mexico or Mexico, I mean, they'll recognize, where we are right away. But I love writing about the desert. And so of Mutts and Men, one of the things about Bernie is he's very environmentally conscious, and he's always worrying about the aquifer, the water problems we have in the desert. So with Of Mutts and Men, this is the way just your normal life plots can come to you. So, I think about the aquifer myself and all that. And, in Arizona, there are a few places where they make wine now. And I thought, oh, how interesting. And I began looking into that a little bit. And then about 2 years ago, I read just a small news story. And it wasn't taking place in Arizona. It was in California, in wine country. And it was that the endowment of a huge Northeastern university, not Northeastern, but a huge university in the Northeast, a huge endowment, was buying up vineyards in wine country, paying far more than they were worth in terms of making wine and selling wine, far more than you could ever get back. And they were doing it kind of quietly. And finally it occurred to people that they were actually, what they're doing is they're actually buying up the aquifer. They're buying up the water underneath. And I thought, oh my God, there's the essence of a story I can do, because Bernie's always concerned about the aquifer. And if you're thinking of like a sort of villain, this is an unusual villain, because, these are sort of the, people running these big universities are kind of, in a way, the most civilized people supposedly that we have. So the whole idea of Mutts and Men, gelled in that. And then I did some research on aquifers, and I found this very cool stuff about perched aquifers and all the kinds of things that can happen. And I had all the science, and I knew that hydrologists were going to play a role. So I have dueling hydrologists in Mutts and Men, and, I was off to the beginning.
That's amazing, because of one article tied in a theme, a environmental conscious of Bernie, and you come across that, and all of a sudden you've got everything you need. But you have to do the research too, though. I love that part of it. People don't realize that. You can't just say, okay, here, I'm going to throw this out there, because you can't. You have to know the science. You have to be at least dangerous enough, know just enough to be dangerous when you're talking about this. Because one of your greatest fans could be, the king of aquifers, could be an endowment person, trying to defend themselves in their university.
Oh, no, you're exactly right. So you can't, if you make a tiny mistake, like if you say, okay, they turned left on First Avenue and parked, and then you get an email from a reader who said, well, you can't turn left on First Avenue from there. In their heads, they're wondering what else, you got wrong. So, if I could just digress for a moment to earlier in my career, I wrote a book called The Fan, which was a crime fiction novel that took place in the world of professional baseball. It was later made into a movie with Robert De Niro. But shortly after the book came out, I got a letter from Buzzy Bavasi, who at that time was the general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it was a very short little note. It just said, "Thank you for getting the baseball right." And that's what you want in all this, that yes, you're just, enough to be dangerous, but that you don't mess it up. And that's what you want to do. So I'll be interesting to see what I hear from hydrologists. None of whom will be as famous as Buzzy Bavasi, right? But,
that's right.
Yeah,
I love those names. Well, I'm a huge baseball fan, so I know these names you're talking of, and to get a note or a letter from one of them is amazing.
Well, of course, baseball is important in the Chet and Bernie series too, because Bernie played. He was in the Army, and he pitched at West Point, and that comes up a lot when they're playing fetch. And in this book, particularly Susie, who Bernie has had an on-again, off-again relationship with, meets this other man who also was a college baseball player, and there's a kind of rivalry scene in a batting cage, which I, was very eager to get to.
Right. That's fantastic. Well, I love that. So listen, we'll take a quick little break here, but I want to come back and talk further with Spencer Quinn, talk just a little bit more about the latest book of Mutts and Men, and then I want to pick your brain a little bit about writing, publicity, these type of things, especially in these volatile times that we're in. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Hi, this is Tim Link, animal communicator and pet expert and host of Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have you ever wanted to know what your pet is really thinking? Do you want to find out if they truly understand what you're trying to tell them? Ever wish you could build a better understanding and closer relationship with your pet? Well, now you can. Learning to communicate with animals is a 4-part on-demand workshop. In the workshop, you'll learn the essential techniques that are necessary to communicate with animals, including what is animal communication, breathing correctly to achieve the perfect state to communicate with your animals at a deeper level, using guided meditation exercises and method to communicate with animals, and how to send and receive information from your animals. So if you're wanting to learn how to communicate and connect with your animals at a deeper level, visit PetLifeRadio.com/workshop and purchase and download Learning to Communicate with Animals. You'll be glad you did.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our conversation with number one New York Times bestselling author and just author extraordinary, one of my favorites, Spencer Quinn, and his latest book of Mutts and Men. Now, Spencer, when we talk about the book and the characters and these things, and they take a look at the differences in this particular novel part of the mystery series compared to what you've done in the past, for this particular book, as well as just the series in general, what do you hope people walk away with? What do you want after they've read this book, other than say, hey, it's pretty good, or maybe I should write him a note because he got the aquifers wrong. But but what do you want them to get out of this book, and then just the series in general? What do you hope to accomplish?
Okay, well, there are two parts to that. One is like what I'm trying to do, and two is what the reaction of the readers is. So all I'm trying to do is entertain the readers. But entertaining is a complicated thing. The kind of reader I want to entertain is not the kind of reader who's just satisfied with an appetizer or only dessert. I think I want the reader who wants a full course meal with the wine and even a drink after. In other words, they don't feel they've been shortchanged in any of the areas of fiction. So the plot, of course, in a mystery has got to be strong. I mean, if you don't have that in a mystery, no matter how good a writer you are, it's not going to work. But I also want to have real human relationships and animal relationships too, and a strong sense of setting so that when the reader enters this world, it actually is a world that they can escape into. And I don't mean escape in a disparaging way where, you're getting, away from hard things, because in the Chet and Bernie books, these are not cozies. They're dark parts. Chet, has suffered at times and had down moments. But the thing about him is that I didn't realize at first, and I did get from reader reaction right away, was that Chet bounces back to his reset position very quickly. And that reset position is one of joy in life. And I didn't consciously do that. That was just the way the character was. And readers point to it over and over, and I didn't intend this, but I get this reaction a lot, that people who've going through hard times, or even health things or bereavement, people have sort of turned to some people have turned to the Chet and Bernie books and really found that world a bit helpful. Now, that was humbling to me. I, of course, did not intend that or attempt to do it, and I think any attempt to do that would be doomed. But it's been wonderful to get the emails and, messages, stating that from them. So, but basically to answer the question, I just want them to be able to immerse themselves in a believable world. It has good and bad in it, but ends in a hopeful kind of way. And I think that's sort of my attitude toward real life as well.
That's a wonderful attitude. I mean, especially in times we talk about, that we're going through right now. Obviously, I don't usually talk about present times, politics. I want this episode to be heard many, many years from now, but everybody will reflect back to this particular episode. And obviously, the nation and the world is going through a pandemic, COVID-19, that, it's got all kinds of ups and downs and people's opinions on it and what they should do and shouldn't do or won't do or will do, these type of things. So as a writer, obviously, I imagine this book, you had it pen and paper or computer to screen, however we do it, pretty much done and dusted before all this happened with the pandemic.
Yes, that's true. But I'm working on the next one right now, and it's almost finished. And that one I've been writing through the pandemic. So as a writer, I have an office over the garage, so basically at home. So I didn't have to change any big habits about that. The other thing is I love riding my bike. So outdoors, so I've been doing that. I ride maybe an hour a day. I live on Cape Cod, and there's a beautiful bike path right near me, or I just go on the roads. And so that I had that the physical part of my life didn't really change all that much. I still got the exercise that I really like to have. Tennis shut down, so I missed that. The gym shut down, and of course restaurants, bars, all that kind of thing. But I was able to, these two important parts of my life, the work and, my bike rides, those I continued with as before. Having said all that, I think it's almost like there's a feeling in the air, which goes back to, the plague and what people, when they had no idea what the plague really was, nevertheless, they thought it was a miasma in the air, they burned things to try to clean the air and everything. And even though we know that's not what this is, I still kind of have felt the whole time a strangeness in the air. Obviously, it's all psychological, but I think that's affected me. I think it slowed me down in this book maybe 10%. I noticed this one's going a little more slowly, not a whole lot, but some. And so, I'm not complaining or anything like that. But I think despite the fact that I haven't really had to change much in terms of my work, it still affected me to a degree.
Yeah. And that's the fascinating part about it, because, how do you turn this negative into a positive? That's the way I always am trying to look at it. And like you, I'm mostly working from home and working with clients still around the world. That hasn't changed. I now have a better excuse not to hit the gym. So that's good news for me. That works out all right. But it's that mental aspect that, you can't help but not be aware of what's going on and feel it around you. And then, the news, for instance, I was never a big fan of the news, stayed away from the news, watched the last minute and a half of the national news network because that's the happy time when they tell the one good story that's out there. Yeah. But now you have to, you almost, even if you don't want to watch it and be aware, you have to, because you don't know what's going on in your world or everything around you and the work that you do. And as a writer, I imagine it does have some mental impact on what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, yes, and you can't, it's, as a citizen, you have to be responsibly knowledgeable to an extent. But, as a writer, I can't let it block me or weigh me down too much. I mean, I really have to strike you could, with this COVID, you could bury yourself in it and the numbers and, and the emotions and all the conflicts that's erupted. Unfortunately, we can't say that this has been a unifying event as, in the past, terrible events like World War II in our country were pretty much a unifying event. This has not been. And I think that's part of the oppressive feeling, too, that, just an unneighborly kind of thing is going on, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that the take I have on everything going on right now is, when is this all going to end?
Yeah,
it's we're talking about it. We're in a pandemic. We've got the, Black Lives Matter coming to the forefront and all the things there. The political environment, we're right in the middle of a, national campaign to select the next president in November. You just got a whole series of things that you're like, my goodness, when is this all going to end? And will we ever get back to being combined, supporting each other again? And I think that you hit it on early on. That's one of the goals that you have in the books as well as in life, is to get everybody back together, forget about things for a while, enjoy things, be together. And I think you do a good job with the books.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'm optimistic in the long term. That would be my take. And I miss sports on TV dreadfully. I can't. It's not that I watched tons, but I always watched a little. And now it's not there. It's like this TV is like this useless box to me now.
It's amazing because, we talked a little bit earlier about baseball. It's like, okay, even when now baseball is going to be starting supposedly here right around the corner by the time this, all the fans are listening to this, we should have baseball.
Yeah.
Toes crossed. We'll see what happens, see if we can get through it. But even then, when we talk about the world being divided, baseball has spent the past month arguing about finances more than they have about the COVID and keeping
It's a
everybody
bad look for baseball.
Very bad look right before we go into some labor negotiations. And so I'm trying to get my head around that, not being irritated at them not getting things on board sooner and taking that opportunity. They could have had a whole month of June to themselves and got the fans really on board with them. And now it's kind of divided, and we got this 60 whole games. It reminds me of my time I spent as a semi-pro baseball player. We played probably about 60 games a year. That was about the extent of it. And all I worried about was staying healthy until the next year, and then the batting average, of course. But even with baseball, I miss that too. And then it's going to be strange. No fans in the stadiums. Will we have cut out cardboard fans like they've done in Korea and some of the Asian countries? I saw a photo. I can't remember if it was the Metropolitan Opera House. Forgive me, I can't remember where it was. But anyway, the stage was set, and in the seats were actually plants. Like I don't know if they're poinsettias or what, poinsettias, but that was your audience. So I'm like you, not to diverse too far, but I'm really interesting to see how the sports environment, and will that be one of the factors? Can we all come together? Can we? Will that be one of the things around? And can my Cincinnati Reds win it all? That would be my big question.
That's a huge question.
That's a big question. For once, they've got the team. They went out and spent some money, and now they're all sitting there. They can't even. I guess they're allowed to chew bubble gum, but they can't spit it out on the ground. But
it's going to be interesting.
For sure. All right. So everybody, go pick up a copy of the book. Fall in love with it. I love the thing. One last thing about the series. Obviously, you can start with this book. If you lived under a rock and you don't know Spencer Quinn's books and Chet and Bernie, you can pick up his book, enjoy it, catch it, get on board with it, and you won't miss a thing. Then you can go back and get all the previous books.
Thanks. I should have said yes. Thanks for doing that. They can be read in any order.
Absolutely. And that's the brilliance of it. And you're going to love it once you get it. So the latest of Mutts and Men, it's a Spencer Quinn, Chet and Bernie mystery series. Spencer, great talking to you again. Lovely to hear your voice. Kudos to big success out there. And I know it's trying times, but I know this book's going to be an overwhelming success, and you just keep doing your thing.
Well, thanks very much. I enjoyed it a lot. You're a great interviewer.
Appreciate it. All right, well, we're coming to the end of our show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank the producers and sponsors for making this show possible. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for the show, or people you want to hear on the show, drop us a line. Visit PetLifeRadio.com. Send us an email, and we'll definitely answer your questions, entertain your comments, and bring on the people you want to hear from most. There we go. And while you're there, check out all the other wonderful, great shows, great hosts on Pet Life Radio. There's a cornucopia of great entertainment there. So take a look at that. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life. Put it in a blog, a magazine, article, or in a book. And who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.